Today I'm going to be looking ahead to my 16 most anticipated games of 2019. Every year I narrow down my most anticipated games of a given year into a list of 16. Don't ask, I'm not sure how I ended up settling on the number 16 either. But this year felt a lot more difficult than previous to narrow it down that far. Upon listing all of the games I'm looking forward to in the coming year, I found myself with over 50 games. So if anyone tries to tell you that 2019 will be a slow year, they're lying to you. As a note, I haven't included a game unless it has been given a 2019 release window, either in a trailer, on a storefront, or by a developer or publisher. So games like Death Stranding, The Last of Us Part 2, Metroid Prime 4, and many more were excluded from consideration before I even started my preliminary list. With that housekeeping out of the way, let's get into the list, presented in order of the stated release, and then alphabetically after that. I mean, it was always going to be my most anticipated game of 2019, right? Setting aside the fact that I'm one of the biggest Resident Evil fans I know, the remake of Resident Evil 2, due out in a few short weeks, looks absolutely stunning. This is a full scale rebuild of the original 1998 survival horror classic, which seems to take everything from that game and mixes it around. The story still looks like it'll follow the same basic formula, and you still end up at the Raccoon Police Department for Leon Kennedy's infamous first day on the job, but judging from the trailers, this will be quite a different experience. Nowhere is that more evident than in Resident Evil 2's gameplay. While I was initially skeptical about the game's move to an over-the-shoulder third-person camera in style of Resident Evil 4, an in-depth look at the game at last year's E3 totally and completely won me over. This looks like an absolutely phenomenal game, even from the brief glimpses of it I've seen, as I've limited the amount of trailers I've watched to avoid seeing too much. Rather than lean too heavily into Resident Evil 4's action, the new perspective and the rebuilt world look like they're bringing the horror back in a big way, and I can't wait to get my hands on the game very soon. I was a huge fan of the incredibly rich and deep world of Sunless Sea. The Gothic horror RPG with a focus on exploring the vast, dangerous Undersea was a highlight for me a few years ago, and I absolutely loved setting sail to find every weird and horrifying encounter I could, hoping I'd brought enough supplies and fuel with me to avoid getting stranded or having my crew eat each other. And so it is with Sunless Skies, which takes the action away from the underground sea and into a Victoria era imagining of what space would be like, which is to say, it's not quite like you or I know space to be. If you've played Sunless Sea, then you'll undoubtedly know what to expect, and if you fell in love with the game as I did, then you'll probably already have this earmarked as a game to watch when it launches in January. While attempting to survive each and every journey out of port is thrilling as you navigate the immediate dangers of managing your supplies or encountering hostile enemies, the true joy of this game is in its excellent writing and deep lore. Finding new islands, interacting with the strange people you meet, and surviving some truly bizarre encounters with your sanity intact are just a few of the things I'm really looking forward to in Sunless Skies. I'm not sure I have too much more to say about Metro Exodus this year than I did last year. This is a holdover from my most anticipated games of 2018 list, as it was featured in that video before it was delayed to this year. The game is due out in a month, and though I've seen more trailers, interviews, and general information about the game in the past 12 months, nothing has really moved the needle for me in terms of how much I'm looking forward to it. The initial 5-minute reveal at Microsoft's E3 press conference in 2017 made me very excited for the game, an excitement I still have for it today. I'm incredibly excited to break out of the confines of Moscow and its subway system to explore the rest of Metro's version of post-apocalyptic Russia. While I really enjoyed Last Light, I feel like that game got about as much out of keeping the action centered in one area as it could, so the freedom to explore further afield and see what new environments, factions, and monsters could possibly await across the rest of the Russian wilderness is an incredibly interesting proposition. Hopefully the game launching in the midst of a slew of other big releases doesn't make this an overlooked game, though if people are anything like me, Metro Exodus will be at the top of your list come February. I'm always down to play a From Software or Souls-like game. In recent years, I've fallen in love with the gameplay styles of games like Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, Nioh, and more. After giving us high fantasy and Lovecraftian lore, Miyazaki and From Software are taking us on the journey of a samurai for Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, and I am totally here for that. After seeing the initial reveal and ensuing gameplay that showed an action game that looked like a joy to play, I was all in. Sekiro does seem to be quite a departure from Dark Souls in terms of its core gameplay mechanics, something which only heightens my anticipation for the game, as I'm definitely up for something a little bit different from the creators of the Dark Souls series. What I'm most intrigued about is the combat system. Instead of attacking enemies until their health bar runs out, you'll instead attack their poise and balance in an attempt to open them up for a single killing blow. Colour me intrigued, especially when combined with the addition of stealth kills and gear such as grappling hooks. March can't get here fast enough. Tough action platformers are having a big resurgence right now, with the likes of Dead Cells and The Messenger proving big hits with players and critics alike. So it's probably a good time for Katana Zero to release. This is a game I've had my eye on for a while, a neo-noir action platformer that's blisteringly fast-paced. Players are equipped with a sword and will have a suite of abilities to make it through some tough gameplay, as death comes in a single hit. Luckily, the protagonist has a few tricks up their sleeve, including a drug called Chronos, which they can take to manipulate time and predict the future, which will definitely come in handy during the game's blisteringly fast-paced fights. Another exciting feature of Katana Zero, a game title which is really satisfying to say for some reason, are the levels, which have been hand-built to provide a huge amount of different paths and strategies for completion, allowing for a large range of tactics, as well as a lot of potential replayability. I've never played the arcade game Killer Queen Black is based on, instead only hearing about the game through reputation from people who have played it. Part of me always lamented the fact that this multiplayer game was hidden away in arcades, only playable by those lucky enough to live near somewhere with a machine. So I was quite happy when Nintendo announced the game would be coming to Switch, and even happier as I dug into what the game was and how it worked, becoming stoked by the possibility of playing this game with friends. So what is Killer Queen Black? It's a 4v4 competitive multiplayer arena game, where two teams of players fight on a single screen. It's not as simple as simply killing the opposing team's players. Instead, teams must either collect and deposit berries at their base, kill the enemy queen 3 times, or ride the queen across the bottom of the level. Players need to try to complete these objectives themselves, while also being mindful of stopping their opponents from doing the same. Matches quickly become highly strategic affairs, with different players attempting to perform different roles, reacting to what the other team is doing, while also trying to complete their own objectives. The creator of the original XCOM game, Julian Gollop, is making a spiritual successor to XCOM. I played the older XCOM games to death when I was a kid, and the Firaxis-helmed reboot of the series are among my favourite games of the past decade, so the idea that the creator behind the game that started it all is making a spiritual successor is incredibly exciting to me. Beyond the legacy of the game's creator, Phoenix Point looks pretty damn fun from what we've seen so far. In a great example of things coming full circle, the tactical combat in Phoenix Point has been inspired by the systems in the XCOM reboot. Alien mutations will also be a big part of the game, as aliens will evolve in semi-random ways to adapt to the tactics and strategy of the players themselves, meaning that your own playstyle can have an effect on how your enemy mutates and evolves. The game also features some 4X mechanics in an open world populated by other human factions who act on their own agenda. Basically, it sounds like Gollop and his team at Snapshot Games have a bunch of interesting ideas on how to evolve the XCOM formula, and I can't wait to see their results later this summer. The fact that After Party is the next game from the creators of the wonderful narrative adventure game Oxenfree was more than enough to get my attention. However, even if I never played their last game, which was one of my favourite games of 2016, just hearing the premise alone would be enough for me to put it on this list. After Party is a game where you play as Milo and Lola, two best friends who have just died and find themselves in hell. The good news is that you can get back to Earth, if you outdrink Satan. And so After Party is a story of going on the most epic bender ever, but in hell. You'll explore different parts of hell, meet new characters, and getting as drunk as you possibly can, all while also trying to figure out why you were damned in the first place. The gameplay looks quite similar to Oxenfree, which is still one of the only adventure games I've played that uses a conversation system that allows you to keep playing while characters interacted with one another. The premise, combined with how awesome the developer's last game was, make this an easy pick for one of my most anticipated games of 2019. The radio silence surrounding Bayonetta 3 throughout 2018 was torturous. After announcing the much anticipated sequel we weren't sure we were getting at the Game Awards in 2017, both Nintendo and Platinum Games haven't really said all that much about the game since. Bayonetta and its sequel are high watermarks for action games, made by the masters of the genre, and waiting for Bayonetta 3 to even be mentioned again is becoming increasingly difficult. Of course, that makes it difficult to talk about since we know very little about the game, but any continuation of this fantastic action franchise is enough to build my own personal hype. Hopefully, it won't be too long before we have news of the game, since it's supposedly releasing sometime in 2019. But until then, you can find me here, attempting to wait patiently for more news about the Umbra Witch's next adventure. I'm pretty much guaranteed to be interested in any game Remedy Entertainment puts out. They're one of my favourite developers, and I'll always be thankful to them for giving us Alan Wake. Luckily, what we've seen so far of Control makes it really easy to justify naming the game as one of my most anticipated games of 2019. It looks good. Really good. Like Resident Evil 2, it was a game that caught my attention during Sony's E3 press conference last year with a snazzy trailer, before sending me into waves of excitement during the ensuing gameplay reveal. While Remedy are best known for crafting rich, detailed stories, this time around the developer has tried to focus on world building and lore. Although there will still be a strong narrative, Control is just as much about giving players a strongly built world to explore. In this case, that world is the Oldest House, a headquarters of a secret government agency that deals with supernatural phenomena. You'll explore this twisting, ever-changing skyscraper as the agency's leader, Jessie, a woman with supernatural powers of her own. Dragon Quest Builders was a very addictive game when it launched a couple of years ago, which was a huge surprise to me as it was nowhere near my radar until I sat down to play it at EGX on a whim. The combination of Minecraft-style building elements and the Dragon Quest franchise was a winner, especially when it came to exploration and the ability to create your own paths to most objectives, or whatever part of the world you were trying to reach. Though unfortunately, it seems to have been a largely forgotten one. Luckily, it wasn't forgotten by Square Enix, who have created a sequel which released in Japan at the very end of 2018. I'm definitely interested in diving back into the Dragon Quest Builder series and seeing what improvements have been made the second time around, which makes the wait for the game difficult, which is always the case with Japanese games that launch in Japan months and sometimes years ahead of the rest of the world. Luckily, I have my anticipation and a cavalcade of other game releases to sustain me while I wait for the release date announcement. Dying Light 2 is a game I never thought I'd be so excited for that it would be on my most anticipated games list. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the first game, even adding it to my Game of the Year list for the year it came out. Its mix of open world exploration, zombie killing shenanigans, and parkour made for an effortlessly fun adventure, made even better by the nighttime mechanics that meant that powerful zombies would emerge if you were unlucky or foolish enough to be outside after dark. But the reveal for Dying Light 2, complete with the changes that have been promised, have given my anticipation for the game a massive boost. Everything I enjoyed from the first game seems to be making a comeback, but now Techland look like they're building an impressive world and story for the sequel, with choice-based mechanics having lasting effects on the plot and world as you play. I'm very curious to see how far-reaching the consequences for your actions and choices will be, as the zombie apocalypse is always a great place for consequence-based choice mechanics to thrive. I've been following my friend Pedro for a long while on Twitter, thanks to the intriguing and incredibly awesome gifts shared by the game's developers for what feels like years now. If you're at all familiar with the game, then you should have a rough idea of the types of gifts that I'm talking about. Getting to see the game finally revealed at E3 last year was a great experience, mostly because people finally believed me when I told them about this awesome game someone was making with the most stylish looking gunfights I'd seen in a game since Max Payne. My friend Pedro looks like a serious amount of fun to actually play. While I'm pretty sure I'll never be able to make the game look half as good as the developer does on Twitter or in the trailer, I can see myself having a ton of fun trying. Between the freeform, twisting gun ballet and the slow motion, this is going to be a seriously excellent game when it finally arrives. And if you're still not sold on the game, that should probably also tell you that Pedro is a talking banana. Ooblets keeps showing up in ID at Xbox sizzle reels, at E3, at Gamescom, at Expo 18. It's never the focus of a section of any given show. Instead, Microsoft just flashes up a few seconds of the game and then sort of pretends it's not really a thing. It's bloody maddening. Ooblets is one of the cutest looking games coming soon, and I wish Microsoft would show more of it during one of their huge press events. Instead, I'm consigned to pointing and shouting Ooblets every time I catch a brief glimpse of it. Ooblets is a cute game inspired by the likes of Animal Crossing, Harvest Moon, and Pokemon, and you can begin to see why I'm excited for this game. You start out in a rundown farm that you'll have to restore, all the while collecting the adorable creatures you'll have no doubt noticed by now. Ooblets. You can get them by having dance battles with wild ooblets or ooblet trainers, as well as grow your own baby ooblets back at your farm. Basically, I've been waiting years for this game, and I feel like if I have to wait much longer, I might explode. To understand my anticipation for Ori and the Will of the Wisps, all you need to do is play the game that started it all, Ori and the Blind Forest. It's on Game Pass, so you really don't have an excuse not to give it a whirl. Blind Forest was a masterclass in brutally challenging platforming and emotionally devastating storytelling. And if you want a glimpse into how much this game's story will give you all the feels, you can take a look at its reveal trailer, the only game trailer that has ever made me cry. There was one weak point in Blind Forest: combat. After seeing the reveal trailer from last year's Microsoft E3 press conference, it seems like that weakness has been addressed in Will of the Wisps, with Ori shown to be using a variety of different weapons to engage the game's enemies in combat. If Will of the Wisps gives us a solid set of combat mechanics while keeping the rewarding challenge levels, pinpoint precise controls, and platforming and emotional resonance of the previous games, this could be one of the most special games to release in 2019. While we'll have to wait a little while longer to find out what game Obsidian Entertainment are making now that they're a first-party Microsoft studio, they did reveal the game that they're making in partnership with Take-Two Interactive, not to be confused with Outer Wilds by Mobius Digital, something that's going to keep tripping me up all year. The Outer Worlds was revealed at the Game Awards last year as a collaboration between the studio that created Fallout New Vegas and the original creators of Fallout, back when it was a tactical RPG. There's a message in there somewhere, but I'm not wholly sure what it is. It looks like a blast. The reveal trailer showed an action RPG that doesn't take itself too seriously, but one with a big focus on an in-depth RPG mechanics. The Outer Worlds will feature recruitable companions with their own storylines, a huge branching storyline, and options to avoid combat altogether via stealth or persuasion. Basically, it's a full-on RPG, the likes of which are becoming increasingly rare these days, but one I didn't know I desperately desired until I saw the reveal trailer last month. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. If you've enjoyed it, please keep it here at Words About Games. We've got tons of content, including our weekly podcast, more impressions videos, patch notes, and our weekly indie game of the week. We also stream over on Twitch at twitch.tv/wordsaboutgames every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. And most importantly, have a great day.